The Nashville Predators have an NHL Star of the Week. We'll tell you who that is. Plus, over the weekend, a recently traded Nashville Predator scored 2 goals in his debut game with his new team. What does a performance like that say about the Nashville Predators? We're going to have a timely discussion on that and a game preview before tonight's Preds Sharks game.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this game day episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insider community and, of course, our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support and we have mad respect for your fortitude this season. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and friends, I have a partner in crime.
That you do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
You all be very glad there is an edit button, because we're on take about 48 of this show, but we have lots of good things to talk about. We're excited to get to, especially the first thing we're going to talk about. Nashville Predators have an NHL Star of the Week. Emma Lingen, talk about things that we didn't know would ever happen this season. We're going to tell you who that is and what was so special about that performance. Plus, a former Nashville Predator just had to go and perform really well in his debut with his new team, which of course gets the pot stirring. Does Nashville give up on talent too quick? We're going to have a quick discussion about that. Finally, friends, it's game day. It's West Coast game day, which means get your nap in today. The Preds are taking on the Sharks on the road tonight. We're going to preview that game. Ooh, there have been some interesting Sharks-Predators matchups previously. Let's hope tonight is maybe a little less nerve-wracking. We're going to get into that soon. But first, Emma, happy Steven Stamkos is the second NHL Star of the Week day to all who celebrate. How about that?
Yes. No, I mean, he was coming off of a career-long 13-game slump, in which he did not have a point, not even just a goal, but a point. And he is, as I said on Twitter, so back because he now, since then, has had 3 consecutive multi-point games. So I think he's got 8 points over his last 3 games, 4 goals, 4 assists. And obviously he had the hat trick in the win over Chicago. And I forget where I saw this, honestly, but I think he's now the first Predators player to ever complete a hat trick in overtime.
I saw that.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Things you don't really think about, but that's good. Obviously, he ever humble. You know, he passed in that same game, passed Mike Bossy on the NHL's all-time scoring list. And of course, all he had to say for himself post-game was, yeah, it only took me about 700 more games to do it. It's like, all right, Stammer, you're good. Don't go Ryan O'Reilly on us now.
They sit next to each other, and I'm like, oh, it's contagious.
I know.
It's contagious.
But yeah, no, it's really good. I think that we had been saying this, you know, like players like Steven Stamkos don't just go 13 games without a point. Like that just doesn't happen. So like we knew that it was kind of, it's like one of your feelings are like farts things. It's like, it's not necessarily, he has had 13 bad hockey games, but that does not mean that he is suddenly a bad hockey player because he is with Nashville instead of Tampa. And again, 3 games is still a very small sample size, but you're starting to see, the chemistry, the consistency. I think him having consistent line mates has a lot to do with that, Andrew Burnett. So it's been good. He's back on the wing instead of center. Obviously with Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Evangelista on that top line, and that line's been buzzing. Honestly, all 4 lines have been buzzing lately, so it's been nice to see, despite what many of you people rooting for the tank may say. It is nice to watch fun winning hockey games.
Yeah. Talking about people rooting for the tank, you look at a player like Steven Stamkos, who, first of all, had such a difficult transition and unexpected situation in last offseason, come to Nashville. It has been a struggle for this Predators team. It's been a struggle for Steven Stamkos to kind of find his groove. I think it is so important that he finds his joy and finds some chemistry here in Nashville. You know, he talked earlier in the year about playing in Tampa Bay. You just knew kind of on a cellular level how the puck was going to come to you, what your line mates were going to be doing. You could anticipate all of those things. Now we're finally seeing him with, like you mentioned, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Evangelista. And if he can build that chemistry with players like that and carry that over into next season, that is going to be very valuable when it comes to what Nashville is capable of next year. I do think part of the equation is that Ryan O'Reilly as a center. I really think that's part of the equation. And I will say also a shout out to Luke Evangelista. We talked with Andrew Brunette recently and asked him about sort of the intangibles of what is working. And one of the things he said about that line with Stamkos, O'Reilly, and Evangelista is he's like, look, Evangelista thinks the game at their level. Now, clearly doesn't have the experience yet, but he thinks the game at their level. So not only is this line combination benefiting Steven Stamkos and giving him some momentum and giving him some confidence, but you are also seeing Luke Evangelista play very, very well. So love to see it. Love to see Stamkos kind of get some kudos. This has been a tough season for Steven Stamkos. So love to see it. Gonna be really interesting. Like they won one game and then you're like, okay, that's one game. Then they won a second game and you're like, even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. And then they win this third game and you're like, okay, is this a thing? Again, it's nailing Jello to a wall. I'm not guaranteeing anything tonight against San Jose, but it is interesting to watch the team play with a little bit of swagger, with a little bit of confidence, facing adversity and not buckling. And friends, we have not seen that all season. So there are steps forward here.
For sure. And I think, a lot of you hear a lot of arguments otherwise, but I think that if you look at you look at a team like Chicago. Yes, of course, Nashville should beat Chicago. But in the past, like Nashville was not beating the teams that they should beat this year. That's been happening all year. And even Chicago took them to overtime. And, I was also thinking going into that game, like this would be so like the Nashville Predators,
Yes.
the 2024-25 Nashville Predators to win, to beat Winnipeg. They beat Seattle, who they couldn't beat earlier in the year. And now they come in and lose to Chicago. I'm like, that would be very on brand for this team, but they didn't. And then now looking ahead to San Jose, and you think, well, San Jose is the worst team in the league, or one of the worst teams in the league. Of course, they should beat San Jose. And it's like, yes, but they have played them twice already this year. Both of those games, they won them both, but you got to look beyond just the results and say that, okay, yes, it's 2 wins, but they still gave up 10 goals to the San Jose Sharks. And so that's what
wacky games.
Yes. And there was one home, one on the road. Now we have another game on the road here, and typically this team has not done well on the road this year. So I think it'll be interesting to see, not just do they win against San Jose, but how do they win? Is it commanding? Does it look like they are the better team? That's what I would like to see.
Yep. We're going to dive into some of the specifics about the game tonight and tell you exactly what we think Nashville needs to do against the San Jose Sharks coming up. We are also going to talk about a Mr. Mark Jankowski and a couple people with really big spoons who like to stir the pot. Is Nashville the place where the fan base just regrets the ones who got away? We'll talk about that in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Factor Meals. If you are looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences every week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled up all day long. Factor meals are a great option for those busy seasons of life, whether it's a new baby or busy evenings with kids' practices, or if you're an empty nester and you just don't want to cook that big meal, but you still want great food and great nutrition. You can eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50off and use our code LockedOnNHL50off. That's 50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LockedOnNHL50off at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Yeah, interesting little to do over the weekend. Thanks, Mark Jankowski, who, we miss. Mark Jankowski, of course, traded very, very late to the Carolina Hurricanes on trade deadline Friday. Saw a quote, Ryan Henkel from the Hockey News. He covers the Carolina Hurricanes. Had a quote from Mark Jankowski. Jankowski said, "It's been crazy. I got a call late, probably a couple hours after the deadline, honestly. Found out then and obviously had a few calls. The GM in Nashville called me to let me know. And then Eric here called me right away. Got a lot of text messages and was just trying to figure out how to get here as fast as possible." He went on to say, obviously, we had a lot of expectations in Nashville and they weren't met. So it was frustrating. I think everyone there feels like they could have done more. But coming over here to a playoff team and a legit contender is super exciting. Gotta love it for Mark Jankowski. Again, one of those players that we were sort of keeping our eye on. We lovingly, respectfully referred to him as the poor man's Colton Sissons. So great piece for Carolina. And then what does he go and do? What did you go and do, Mark Jankowski? You scored 2 freaking goals in your debut with Carolina. And what do people in Nashville do, Emma? They pick up giant spoons and they begin stirring the pot. Stirring the pot. And it becomes another piece in the narrative that every player that Nashville gets rid of just goes somewhere else and flourishes. And so Emma and I were talking about this and we were like, but do they? So, Emma, when you look at the players who are off of the roster right now, remember we talked yesterday, 10 players from the opening night roster now with other teams, whether via trade or waiver. When you look at players like Dante Fabro, Phil Tomasino, Alexander Carrier, Gus Nyquist, Juuso Parssinen, I can't even remember them all. Do you look at them and say, man, there's the one that got away?
No. There is really only one player who is a former Nashville Predator who I genuinely look at as, and this, to be clear, this is not just saying of all the players who've been traded or whatever, because some of them, they had value when they were traded, and that's, why they were traded. Like, I don't put Matthias Ekholm in this category. I think that was, it wasn't that the Predators had given up on him. It was just that he was one of their most valuable pieces and they needed to move him. So I don't put him in this category. But if we're talking about players who have left the Nashville Predators because clearly for one reason or another, they had fallen out of favor in the organization and have now gone on to play elsewhere, the one who I really, truly believe fits the description of what you're saying, where they just go somewhere else and they flourish, Matt Duchene.
Yes.
Matt Duchene is the only one, I think. The rest of them, now Dante Fabro is one, and I'm on record saying I did not like that deal, or not even
Right.
deal, just the move to put him on waivers. I didn't care for that. He has done well. He's settled into a top pairing role there. It's just interesting because like a guy like Dante Fabro, when he was in Nashville, he either played on the top pairing with Roman Josi or he didn't play at all. It was like, it just seemed odd. And so, for there's a lot of nuance and a lot of things that go into that. But I think with a lot of guys, like looking at Mark Jankowski, love Mark Jankowski,
Yes.
but he is he was kind of a fringe, not kind of, he was a fringe NHL player when he first signed with Nashville a few years ago and then ended up re-signing with them. And he was bouncing back and forth between the AHL and NHL. He's a journeyman. He's been around for a long time. And so no one can look at Nashville and be like, wow, you let this great, like franchise altering player get away. It's like,
Yes.
and so again, he scores 2 goals in his debut. Great. Sure. Good for him. But I think first of all, it's one freaking game, people. Like, again, I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Mark Jankowski when I say this, but even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes. So it's like he's running on pure adrenaline. He's out there, he's playing with a playoff team. It's new, it's exciting. Like, of
Yes.
course, it's natural. You're going to get kind of this boost that you can't get from staying in the same place. And, similar thing we saw with Phil Tomasino when he left and went to Pittsburgh, and he, got really hot as soon as he got traded. Since then, y'all, he's kind of plateaued out. Like, he's been fine. He's been a fine player with Pittsburgh. Same with Ellie Tolvanen a few years ago. Went to Seattle, got that immediate kind of shot out of a cannon. Like, it was, oh my gosh, Nashville has given up on this amazing player. And since then, for Seattle, he has been a fine winger. Like, not bad, not great. And it's just hard for me to look at the Predators right now and say, you know what this team needs? Mark Jankowski and Ellie
Right.
Tolvanen. Like, no,
100%. Yeah.
it's just not. I mean, again, Matt Duchene made this team better. Dante Fabro made this team better. Those are the two that I really have had a hard time with. The others, like, we know I love Cody Glass, I love Juuso Parssinen, I love Phil Tomasino, but all three of those guys were clearly, they just didn't have a path to regular playing time with Nashville. For whatever reason that is, they didn't. And I just don't think that, if I'm being honest, any of those three guys, letting them get away, I don't think any of them was like a huge mistake for the Predators at all.
It's so interesting. And I think this comes down to emotional sunburn. Like, this is hockey emotional sunburn, where, of course, this season has been just brutal to watch, for the fan base. That's just what's real. This has been brutal to watch, regardless of where expectations were. Just the on ice product has been rough. And I think people have wanted Barry Trotz to do some things, whether that's with coaching, whether that's with the roster management. I don't think he did the things that a lot of the fan base wanted at the trade deadline. And so to see Mark Jankowski score 2 goals, I think that's like somebody slapping a sunburn. Like, really, they didn't hit you that hard, but you sunburned, and it hurts extra.
Yeah.
You
Well, I
know,
also think like these are the same people who are whining about Mark Jankowski are the same people who probably did not care or even know at times that Mark Jankowski was on the roster in Nashville. Like, no one cared this much about Mark Jankowski
yeah,
until he left and started
yes,
doing things. And
yeah,
then again, it gets twisted to fit this narrative of, well, every player who leaves Nashville goes on to do bigger and better things. No, Matt Duchene did, yes.
yes.
But overall, no. And
Mhm.
I think, like, I mean, it's not like every time a player leaves the Predators and goes on and has like a good game or a couple of good games with another team, immediately the fan base reacts like it's Jack Eichel leaving Buffalo and going to Vegas and having like 2 years of great hockey. Like, that's not what's happening here, people. And I get that it hurts. To your point, it is like emotional sunburn. It hurts, it stings. It is not enjoyable. But at the end of the day, these are not things that we need to be that worked up about.
Yeah. So much is situational as well. You look at the bump that Phil Tomasino had. Phil Tomasino went to Pittsburgh and played on a line with Anthony Beauvillier and Evgeny Malkin. Look, my stats would go up if you put me on that line. And I mean, no disrespect to Phil Tomasino, because he was definitely a player who needed and deserved a fresh start. And sometimes that is really good for you, but he was also put in a line situation to succeed. You look at Mark Jankowski, who I am thrilled for, quite honestly, thrilled for, but he is going to a contending team where you have your top 6 going and you are just looking to plug a little tiny hole in your bottom 6, because you've got your bottom 6 for the most part doing what you need them to do when it comes to depth play, depth scoring, special teams. So a lot of it is situational as well. Yes, there is something that is not palatable about watching a player leave the Nashville Predators where they underperformed and going somewhere else. And I think, again, it comes down to, I think there is a general dissatisfaction with the coaching situation. I think there is some dissatisfaction with roster management. I think people are questioning, everything down to draft strategy and forward development, but not everything. You don't need to get out your giant wooden spoon and your big old drama cauldron every time.
Drama cauldron. Put it on the swag.
Put it on the swag store. You just put your wooden spoon in your drama cauldron away. Like, we have enough actual things to be upset about here when you are following the Nashville Predators. Today is game day, of course. Who knows how we're going to feel tomorrow? But we'll see. The Nashville Predators, again, taking on the San Jose Sharks. Coming up, Emma and I are going to share our keys to the game for Nashville to walk away with, oh my gosh, can you believe it? Perhaps a 4th win in a row. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that is both nutritious and delicious? You need to crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I personally am a fan of the no shells variety. It's a great grab and go snack for busy days, whether you are sitting at your desk or in your car on the go, or you just reach that point in the day where you just know you need some protein. It's a great go-to. And if you love the cracking open of every shell for that satisfying crunch, they have a great in-shell option. It's a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Emma, the Nashville Predators are playing the San Jose Sharks. And as we said earlier in the episode, I don't know if we have seen 2 more drunk games this season. And that, my friends, is saying a lot. The Predators won both those games, but not without a 0 defense and a little bit of a struggle. It's going to be interesting tonight. There's always a lot of, especially this season, there is a lot of eyes on San Jose. A, Yaroslav Askarov is there, but B, Nashville and the San Jose Sharks are so very close in the standings. You can almost not stand it. They played back-to-back games in January. January 23rd, Nashville went down 4-1 in the first period, clawed their way back to a win. And then the next night, Nashville started out, went up 3-0. Look at us. And then San Jose came back to tie it up in the second. Fedor Svechkov, person who celebrates International Women's Day, friends, won with a power play goal in the third period. Emma, when you look back at the 2 January games, it's really hard to pin down what in the ever-loving flag knock we're going to see tonight. But what are you hoping for?
Well, I first of all, shout out to Fedor Svechkov for congratulating all of us on being women. That I love that. Champion of women everywhere. Yeah. And then I touched on this earlier. I think, I want to see, again, it's not like, I want to see a win because this is a team that they should beat. It's, you want to see, like, this is a team, if you look at these two rosters, not the records, not like anything from this season. If you just look at these two rosters, Nashville should beat San Jose handily. And that is kind of what I would like to see. Like, I'm not saying the final score needs to be like 10-1, but I'm saying that it should be clear for 60 minutes that Nashville is the better team. That's what I would like to see, because San Jose already was not the better team. And then at the deadline, obviously they're still selling. They're going on their full rebuild. I think they made some sneaky good moves. At the deadline, not that's going to help them this year, but looking ahead, they traded Luke Cunnin, Fabian Zetterlund, who else is it? Jake Wallman. They got rid of Jake Wallman. So, and then of course earlier they had already traded Cody Ceci and Mikhail Granlund, and so they are really just kind of full on committing to the sell, getting whatever value they can. So they've lost a lot of veteran presence. They've lost a lot of, a lot of their scoring. And so I think that, this is a team that you don't want to say they're not playing for anything, because they're professional athletes. They're all playing for something. But it seems like if you look at Nashville's roster and then you look at San Jose's roster, Nashville's roster is pissed off about where this team is in the standings right now and about how they have performed. They are playing, for their own pride and their own dignity. San Jose was never supposed to be good this year. So it's really no skin off their nose. And they're young. They're learning. It is what it is. It's a fun time. It's a fun Sharks team. We'll say Yaroslav Askarov now. The goalie formerly known as Yaroslav Askarov is not going to be in the lineup. He has been injured, and he has been with the San Jose Barracuda. Doesn't sound like there's an official timeline as far as when he'll be back, but I guess he has been skating with the Barracuda, has been practicing with them, so that's good. But yes, does not sound like we're going to be seeing him tonight.
Yeah, which, again, put your drama cauldron away. That's just one less thing for us to squawk about. It's one less thing to squawk about. It's so interesting to me, and we have chatted off and on with JD Young. He's the host of Locked On Sharks, which is a fabulous listen, by the way. Just highly recommend JD. He's so fun. But one of the things that we want to sit down and talk about with JD is the way these two teams are approaching developing and bringing in young players, and kind of the difference between a San Jose Sharks rebuild and a Nashville Predators, quote, retool. Two very different things happening. And I don't know. It'll be interesting in the offseason. So stick around, because we got lots of great content to talk about in the offseason. And that is one that we've chatted with JD Young just recently about, like, hey, we want to sit down and hammer this out. For me, it really comes down to, for the love of God, do not hang your goalie out like Amish laundry in April. Just don't do it. You gave the San Jose Sharks 10 goals in 2 games, y'all. Southern hospitality aside, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? So for me, I really want to see the defense step up. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the defensive pairings. Remember in Chicago or against Chicago at home, they went 7 defensemen. Let's see what they do. I just have my mouth closed and an eyebrow raised, and that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. They wanted to get Jordan Osterley in there. Obviously, Barry Trotz traded Mark Jankowski at the 11th hour. Zach LaRue was still not ready to go. Michael Bunting's still not ready to go. And so that was out of necessity. They quite literally had
Nobody.
no more than
No
11
body.
forwards. They had no body.
They had no body.
So I think, it sounded like after practice on Monday, Andrew Brunette, it seemed like we're not going to be seeing Zach LaRue in against San Jose. At least it seems very unlikely. He is skating with the team. He's practicing on the right track, but it sounds like, they want to get him a few more practices before he's back with the team. And then Michael Bunting, we still don't really know yet. I don't think he underwent an appendectomy right before he was traded. So we'll see there if they have a body or if, we see a familiar face in Ozzy Weisblatt or someone coming back up. I don't know. But yeah, it's a fluid situation.
It is a fluid situation, you all. The lineup's going to be very interesting. I really also would love to see the power play be successful. They had a lot of success on the power play, against San Jose's penalty kill, which I think ranks, oh gosh, where do they rank? I looked it up, 27th. So, but let's be honest, Nashville without Roman Josi, now without Gus Nyquist, a little tricky once that puck leaves the zone to get that bad boy back in. Can we give just a real quick shout out to Sir Blankenberg, who jumped in on the power play against Chicago and skated the puck 200 feet, was like a hot knife through butter. He just did not have time to piss about, as they say in Billy Elliot, the musical. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they manage the power play and just, score. Steven Stamkos, keep it going. Go for first star of next week. Why not? So it is a late start. Correct me if I'm wrong, Emma. Y'all, 9:30 p.m. Central Time. You're going to want like second supper at about 8:45 to get through this and a fat nap. But yeah, it's going to be one of those things. Yeah. Emma and I, don't worry, we'll be up. We will stay up. We will watch the game. If you can't, don't worry. On tomorrow's show, we are going to recap whatever we see, including our one word to describe the game. We're going to talk about the players that stood out, what maybe was a factor in a hopefully 4th win in a row, or perhaps another sure loss to the San Jose Sharks. So stay tuned tomorrow. We'll let you know what we see. Oh, pray for our eyes. Emma, before we log off on this episode, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
Yes, you can find me taking a fat nap and proceeding to chug a Celsius to stay awake. And when I'm not doing that, you can find me on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Emma_Lingen. And you can find my work, including a live game thread with all the live updates from the game against San Jose at the Hockey News.
Love that. I will be also taking a fat nap. Probably just going to eat dark chocolate raisinets and hope that does the trick to keep me up, because I can't drink coffee. And can you imagine me on a Celsius? I don't think so. But you can also find me where I'm much more subdued-ish on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that's going to do it for this game day episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks again so much for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with that game recap. We'll see you then.